My name is June Staley, and each member of the group will introduce themselves as they tell you about our jail ministry. We begin with Rachel Gross.
Thank you, June, and I'm going to ask us to begin by singing the first verse of Amazing Grace. We'll sing the version that's at number 143 in the blue hymnal. I'm inviting all of you to sing with me. It's not us that are singing, so. I wanted to start that way for two reasons. One is that when I was a part of the group going to the jail, I often would take my guitar along, and the women really appreciated that and enjoyed singing. And the other reason is because I'm not very good at it, and that is illustrative of no skills needed to be a part of this group, just a passion for ministry and a love for women who have ended up in the jail. I was very nervous when I started going about leading a Bible study. I'd never done that before, but it's usually a pretty easy group to work with. So I am going to talk about the history of caring women, and I wish I actually knew a little bit more about it than I do. I think it started sometime in the 1990s. There were women who had gone to a Church Women United conference about incarceration, and they came home from that with the idea of let's do as Jesus asked us to do and visit people in prison. And so they went to the jail and proposed that idea, and it was accepted. And at that time, they had to fill out some information sheets, and they each got a card. They recruited some other women. I know that Joanne Young was one of them, and I don't know who. I think there was one other person that started with her. And they each had a little identification card that they would show when they went to the jail. Over time, the group grew, included several women. Some of these names will be familiar to you, I'm sure. Lois Davis, and Dorothy Weldy, June Kindy, Ivana Lee Connect, Laura Gable, Kay Geyer, and myself. I stopped going about 10 years ago, and the rest of these women here are all part of the current group, and so I can talk about how it got started, but I need them to tell you what's happening there. And yeah, some things haven't changed, some have. We've always gone by twos to the jail, but we would meet together as a group once a month to plan our schedule. One of the things I appreciated during the time that we were going was that the group represented several different denominations. Ivana Lee was Mormon, and Lois Davis Methodist, and probably most of the rest of us were Church of the Brethren, but from different congregations. And I felt like between our different backgrounds and just our different styles and personalities, it just really added a lot of good dimensions to the group and our time with the women there. It's, as I said, 10 years since I stopped going to the jail. During that time, there's been a pandemic and a new jail was built. And most of these women were part of that, part of this group all during that time, and went through lots of changes because of that. So I'm going to let them tell you about it, and hopefully we'll have time for some questions at the end. I think amongst us, we could keep you here the rest of the day telling stories from all the different women that we've met over the years and experiences that we've had. But for now, we'll just each briefly share.
I'm Deetta Bolser. I attend the Yellow River Church of the Brethren, and I started with this group. It doesn't seem like it was very long before the pandemic. I can only recall about going down about 3 times, and I never led in the old jail. I always went down as a support person just because I was new. I just wasn't real confident. And in the old jail, we had a small, what they called the library, is where we met. It was not an uplifting place at all. Very few books. The ones that were there, well, they ended up clearing almost everything out. I don't know how a book can be a weapon, but, and what we found is that the new jail is even worse. What the inmates are allowed to have is very minimal. We have been able to give Bibles to them. We were able to give them Bibles at the old jail. And so we have continued doing that. We're a part of the Fellowship of Churches now, and they will provide Bibles for us to give out. At the old jail, I felt like there was actually more compassion from those who were in charge and who would let us in than what we get now. Everything seems to be strictly by the book. They separate the women now into 2 groups based on the severity of their crime. It's not a bad room that we're in. It's got some similarities. It's just brick walls, but we do have 3 nice tables usually where we are, and they do provide us chairs. We didn't always have that in the old jail. And there is a larger room. You said you had 8 this morning. That would have been pretty full in the little room. But I've just found that there seemed to be more compassion. There's still lack of organization. There's still lack of communication. None of that changed. I think we all hoped that the new jail was going to be just something wonderful. And I think we were all disappointed. And the other thing I was going to say is there is not any fairness between what the men receive and what the women receive. The men have been allowed to have some programs that the women, for whatever reason, are not allowed. Hopefully at the first of the year, we've heard rumors that that's going to change, but we've heard promises before. And the women often say that the Wabash jail, most of these women have been in more than one jail, and they say that Wabash jail is one of the worst.
That's not a real good sign, is it? One of the things that we noticed, and I don't really know at the other jail whether they had windows, but they do not have any windows except a skylight in a recreation room that's maybe about this size with a taller ceiling. And there's a skylight so they know if it's raining or if it's snowing or cloudy or sunny. But there is not much of anything in the recreation room that we know of. We took a tour in November before they opened, and it was like there's no recreation in here. No tables, no chairs, no basketball hoop or anything. So, we were really disappointed, but really we need to talk about the women. These girls are just, I think they just got off on the wrong foot somewhere along the line because most of them are in for drugs. This girl that was in there this morning, we had one girl from the first cell block, and they caught her with marijuana in her car. And while she doesn't seem to be a bad person, they just are misguided. A lot of them are interested in the Bible study. The ones who aren't interested just don't come. But, we find that the ones who are interested, some of them have had church background and some of them haven't. And you just feel really sorry for these people because they are, they don't look anything like a hardened criminal that, sometimes if they take a picture for the newspaper and they've done something wrong, man, those pictures really make them look bad. So I feel bad about that. But these these girls really want to turn their lives around, I believe, and we just hope they can.
Hi, I'm Susan Dyer, and I am a new member of this group. This will be the first holiday season that I am a part of this journey for so many, not so many women, unfortunately, for the few women who do come and want to, they want a normal life. And as you just heard, they are, once you get on the bad side of the law, it's what I'm learning, it's just very, very difficult to right yourself. And so one of the things that I was aware of when I first began going with this awesome group was that these women just kept talking about drugs. And so I think I asked them several months ago, well, are you familiar with the 12-step recovery program? And they were. And so my next question was, is that available to you here in this jail while you either wait to go on to prison where it is available, or whether you are staying here waiting to get out? They said no. That's when we all first learned about, well, the inequities of the jail, the seeming inequities of the jail in Wabash. These women were very interested in getting a 12-step program started. I'm assuming that you all are familiar with what a 12-step program is. It's available as an Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a method for folks who are addicted to alcohol or drugs to begin to get sober. And of course, there are no drugs, there's no alcohol, at least as far as I know legally, where these women are now. So while they're in prison, or while they're in the jail, I've got to remember, this is not prison, this is the jail. While they're in the Wabash County Jail, they don't have access, and so they begin to get sober. I worry about then when they're released, what happens. And for all of their wanting desperately to stay sober, to get sober and stay sober for their children, for their own lives, it's very, very hard. And so I've had an occasion in my life to work with 12-step programs, and so I saw in the newspaper, I think it was the Wabash, whatever that newspaper is, this summer that there was going to be a 12-step program begun for men and women in the jail. And it gave the name of the contact person who was going to begin this program. And so I got on the phone and I called and I spoke with this woman. I told her I was interested in helping, that this was a program that was very much needed for these women. They really wanted help with this, to start a new way of living. And we were supposed to meet, and then something happened. I have no idea what it was, but the program was dropped. So no women's 12-step programs. Men, yes, 12-step programs. Men also there's a chaplain part-time, and he's a man, he's male, and I'm like, to the women, do you all have a female chaplain that you feel safe talking to? And that was no too. So that's kind of the little niche that I've begun to see where it takes us. I've left messages with the commander. I know that the folks who work in the jail probably feel overwhelmed with all they have to do. So I'm very grateful for this group of women, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Mim Eberly is my name. I joined the group. In fact, Rachel was the one that called me, and I didn't even think twice about it. It seemed like that's something that I really wanted to do. And I have just been so blessed by it. If any of you are feeling a calling, I have some forms with me that you can fill out. I have a story about our model woman from the jail. She was in the jail, the old jail. She came regularly to women, the Caring Women Bible studies, and she had a church background, and she was very fortunate to have supportive parents who loved her regardless of where she was or where she did. And I think a lot of women that come to the jail do not have that support. And that may be one of the big reasons they are in the situation they are. But she came faithfully, and she was there for 2 years because at that time the state had decided that the prisons were overcrowded. So they would keep, the county jails were to keep the prisoners instead of sending them to prison. And that lasted for quite a while until the county jails got so crowded then they had to send women out to the prisons. Makes no sense. But we got a really close relationship with her being there for 2 years. And then when she was transferred to the women's prison in Indianapolis, we corresponded fairly regularly. And I was told that she was working in the kitchen, that she was helping to set up a chapel. She started a mime group for the chapel. She did a computer class or two, a coding. She learned coding, whatever that is. And she just took advantage of all that she could. And she learned how to put up with some really unusual roommates, which would, well, she called them bunk mates, that would be hard to deal with. She just really grew in her relationship with God and with as a person. So when she left the prison, she got a job right away teaching coding to the women that were in the prison, which I think is, and she's not just a teacher, she spreads love and encouragement with that. So we're still close. We meet with her once in a while. So, and she's preached at Eel River. So she's really making strides in her development.
Hello, I'm Shirley Fetro. I'm probably the newest member on the Caring. I'm one of the newest members here on the caring women. And I've been doing it for a few months. I, at this point, am a support person. I haven't quite got up to the confidence to lead one of the groups, but I think mainly unfortunately, I think a lot of people do. We stereotype people, and you think, oh, well, they're bad women, you know, they're in jail. But what I have found and have seen, they really are amazing women. The ones that come to our on Wednesday mornings, they have a true desire to know Jesus and God and to do better in their lives. And that just is just, you know, something that I really respect from them. And I'm very proud to be a part of this group in any little way that I can.
My name is Nikki, and I am just grateful for the opportunity to be a part of something that's so beneficial to the community and to the women that have just gotten off the path. Service is what it is for me, just to offer service, wisdom, kindness, because sometimes just a smile, being kind and thoughtful, changes their day. And that's fulfilling to me, and maybe it's more helpful for me than it is for them, but that's why I'm a part of the group.
We have a few minutes for questions. I might just add that when we went to the old jail, we sometimes took candy. I guess we weren't supposed to, but nobody ever said not. Well, in the new jail, I don't think we'd try that. Everything seems to be much more strict, by the book, and when you go in, they look in your bag to see what you're bringing in. So let's have any questions you have. Dean.
What's the difference between jail and prison? Jails are run locally by the county, and I, in my naive years, would have thought that that made it a friendlier, easier place to be. But the reality is that there's less oversight than there is with state facilities, and people are supposed to be in jails for a shorter time, and so I think that's part of the reason that programs don't get started, whereas in the state prisons where the people are there for longer sentences, there are all kinds of educational programs and a lot more oversight. And so generally, as has been mentioned here, men and women find it generally easier to be in prison than to be in the county jail.
My understanding, if you look at an amusement park and you know there's always that place where they group you before you actually get on the ride, the county jails are kind of that holding pen until they can figure out. And some of them move fast and some of them move really slow.
And I think a lot of them really look forward to going to prison because they'll have opportunities to do more in prison as far as, you know, maybe they can help cook or something, but the men do get to cook there, but not the women. And that's a little strange, but yeah, a lot of times when we go, we do very little Bible study because a lot of the women just really need to talk and they need to be heard. And they, you know, tell us their concerns, their worries. A lot of them worry about their families and their children, and that's the hard part. So, you know, just keep these women in your prayers. Anybody else want to talk? You want to talk?
Oh, when they're in the jail, county jails too, it's a time of unknown. They aren't told with any, if you have an appointment coming, you know it's coming, but you have no idea when, whether it's with your lawyer, whether it's a doctor's appointment. They explain it like they just will show up and tell so-and-so to get in their stripes. So if they get to the point where they're going to prison, by that time, they know their term, they know what they have to serve, and a lot of those unknowns disappear. Even if it's hard for them to face maybe what they've got to face, at least it relieves all that unknown that they've been having to deal with when they sit in the county jail.
One of the things that really shocked me during the time I was going was that I was told by one of the jail commanders that as many as 95% of the people in the jail have not yet been to court. So the idea that people are innocent until proven guilty is just a myth. And that is, there's been a lot of back and forth between the states and the counties about holding people. Theoretically, the jail should be the place where they are till they go to court, have a speedy trial, go to court, have their sentence. Part of the strategy seems to be that the longer they sit in jail, the more likely people are to just take a plea to say, okay, I did it, even if maybe they didn't, in order just to get the situation resolved. And the state a few years ago had tried to shift that a little bit, I think, in a positive way, but it didn't work. And so, yeah, people just end up being in the jail for a really long time before they end up then usually going to prison, often going to prison. One thing that I didn't mention, or that has been alluded to, is during the time I was going, there was a lot more freedom about, by the time I started going, I didn't have to fill out any form. I just started going, and our bags were never inspected. And during that same time, there were also some women from North Manchester, including Judy Brown, who's here today, who had a couple different programs going, making jewelry and knitting and crocheting with the women, and they loved it. It was hugely successful. But unfortunately, that got stopped, partly because things they were making started showing up on the men's side of the jail somehow, which wasn't supposed to happen. And so that sadly put an end to that. And by the time I quit going, things had gotten a little bit more rigorous. We weren't supposed to give the women pens or pencils to write with, or even take writing paper for them to use while they were there. So anyway, yeah.
We do take, usually upper rooms, I think is what it is. We take not the whole book, but we will pull the staples out and give individual pages to the women. They absolutely love them. Part of our, I call it a fear, but our concern is to me, I feel like they're watching us to find something that would keep us from coming in. And so we feel like, we don't want to have anything in a bag that we're not supposed to have. We don't want to try to, push too much or test too much, because we see what it does when we're there. It's like Nikki said, I mean, it's just unbelievable. They're women just like we are that
They are patted down.
yeah, okay. The first time I saw that too, we never saw that in the old jail. The women have to be patted down before they come into the room with us. And after they leave, it's the same thing. So we see them stand against the wall with their hand, they know what to do. They do it all the time. But it's like there's no dignity. The whole idea is punish, punish, punish. We're not going to give you anything. You did something wrong.
I think the one thing that shocked me was that they weren't allowed to have readers' glasses. So even for their own documentation, court documentation, anything, if they couldn't read their own mail. And there was no budging on that.
Thank you so much for coming today. If you have more questions, I think some of the ladies are willing to stay a little bit longer. But since it's 4:30, we'll call it a halt, and let's give them a round of applause.